What's cracking, people? Angelic Mayhem here. So, welcome to the first video in my Anno Online series. This video, I'm just going to cover a very basic concept with you that will make this game probably twice as easy as it is if you didn't know this. And this is pretty standard stuff for anybody who's played simulation games or whatever. I will be doing some additional videos in the future. And during those videos, I will be referring to two different kinds of buildings. The first kind of building is infrastructure, and the second kind of building is people structure. So what's the difference? Well, there are buildings that the people live in, okay? And then there are the buildings that allow the people to live in those buildings. Those are the infrastructure buildings. So out here we have a lumberjack hut. Over here we have a fisherman's village. And somewhere down here there's my goats. Where's my goats? Goat. These three buildings are, in the early game, the buildings that allow your city to even exist at all. Okay, they provide food, which is fish, building material to physically construct these buildings, and goats, which supply milk. Now, these three are unique from these buildings over here. So let me get into, for instance, the chapel. Okay. Anytime you have a building that has people in it, okay, each building can house 8 people, and there are certain prerequisites to actually having people in the building. First prerequisite is community, second one is services, and the third one's faith. Community comes from these small marketplaces here. The security comes from the carpenters, and the faith comes obviously from the chapels. Now, the idea here is that these technically qualify as people buildings. So when you are designing your game, the first thing that I want you to think about is your infrastructure, okay? Because these buildings require resources. And if you place these buildings in the wrong spot, it will wipe out the resources and limit the effectiveness of the building. So for instance, this lumberjack hut, it says that it's at 100%. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this church randomly out to here. Well, that's a big example. All right, let's try the second church as well. Bingo. So now you can see that the lumberjack hut has already gone down to 98%. The question is, why is that? It's because these buildings are physically standing on trees that the lumberjack hut used to use. So if you jam your people all the way up to the lumberjack hut, you're going to cut down the productivity of this building. That's a bad thing. So you always want to focus first on the infrastructure and think to yourself, how will I set up the infrastructure to take maximum advantage of this terrain? Then, after you have your infrastructure set up and you run roads out to your infrastructure, you can then focus on your people buildings and establish your city. That's the best way to handle it, and I would encourage you to think about that every time you set up one of these cities. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Angelic Mayhem, and I'll see you next time.